This is Stephen Kotler, and you're listening to Your Superior Self.
This is Christina Rasmussen, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Dave Meltzer, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, I'm Anita Murjani, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Paul Selig, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
What is up, beautiful people? What is going on? I'm Trey Downs, and this is Your Superior Self. Thank you for taking the time to hang out and download this episode. I'm glad you did, because Udo Erasmus joins the show. Man, he's got an incredible story. Grew up in the middle of a war, was a refugee, was abandoned by his family because of the horrible situation that they were in. And I mean, I can go on and on and on. I mean, this guy has done it all, it seems. But we don't talk about a whole lot of his story as far as how he got out of that. I guess we do. We talk about his inner journey, his inner knowing, our access to that inner knowledge that is inside of us, which I fervently seek. And he has a lot of great experiences that he mentions here in this episode. He talks about a 14-year-old boy that gave him the way to find that inner knowing, which I was kind of, I didn't get to ask a follow-up, but that inner boy, that 14-year-old boy, had found a way to connect with the higher being that we are. And that 14-year-old boy was Prem Rawat. You can Google him. He's a speaker. His last name is spelled R-A-W-A-T. Prem Rawat. And he has a lot of great speaking reels on YouTube. He has a lot of great books. Things that I pick up when I need to kind of put things in perspective about my journey, and when I get too out of touch with myself, with the being that I truly am. And I have to thank Udo for sharing that with me. Yeah, this is a pretty deep conversation. I mean, really, really deep, and really a good reconnector with who we truly are. And here's a little clip of what's to come.
You know, a blade of grass has no words. Probably has a better experience than most humans.
Sure. I mean, the rock outside my window has a better experience.
Yeah. But the issue is I think is more about relaxing and letting go.
It's so short and sweet, but it like makes you think. Like that blade of grass outside of your door or your window has probably a better existence than we do, because of the thoughts that we have in our minds that just plague us, that crush us, that distract us from living in the moment. If you think about it, right? Like every meditation that I've ever heard of is always trying to getting rid of the thought and kind of being in the, well, not kind of, but being in the moment, and really just diving into that, but feeling it. Like I don't even, like it's crazy how when I'm in the moment and I start listening to some of the meditations, how they're so focused in on what are you feeling, what are you, just like what Udo talks about in this conversation, like what are you feeling, what are you seeing with visions, not from your eyes but from your from your source, from your being. What is it that is drawing into you? What is it that you're seeing? Is there pictures that are flashing up? What are you hearing? What are you feeling? What are you tasting? Like feel your body, you know, where does it end and the cosmos begin? It's just like putting your mind around that and like feeling that and not judging it and just letting it flow. And you know, I have great visions when I do this. I have great visions, and it's so powerful and feels great. It feels so good because it's the truth. It is my truth, and I hope that you guys find your truth. You can read so many different books on meditation, but ultimately it's what makes you feel good at home that really connects you and really just kind of drowns out that outside noise. And Udo has a lot of great insight on if we can be so successful on the outside, like you could have everything, like you could finally accomplish all your dreams, but if you're not connected inside internally, like sound, like that, all that external stuff is just gonna wear on you, like still gonna wear on you. It's not gonna matter what you achieve. It's because, you know, internally, inside our source, inside of our hearts, inside of our souls, that is where true happiness resides. And most of the time when you're out of sorts, or when you're, you know, disconnected from that source, you feel terrible. You feel like there's something missing. And it's funny, I just had a conversation with Bruce Lipton not too long ago, and he brought up a quote, I guess from the 60s or whatever era that was. But before you go out and try to fix the world, he says, you gotta fix your backyard. And I connected with that deeply. How can I talk about, you know, meditation? How can I talk about spirituality and well-being if I'm not doing that myself? And, you know, I've made a recommitment to get back into meditation and to get back into connecting with that true source, that higher power, that being that is all of us, that spark of God that Udo calls it. And I hope that you guys do too. But before we get into this very powerful conversation, I want to talk about the Abandoned Children's Fund, which is a nonprofit that helps abandoned children around the world in underprivileged countries. They bring them in, they give them food, they give them clothing, they give them education and healthcare. They have a bunch of orphanages around the world, and usually war-torn countries or countries that are struggling in famine, disease, you name it, whatever it is, they are struggling, and this nonprofit helps them, helps bring them in and make them feel loved. So all I ask is that you either donate or bring more awareness to this great organization. Go to abandonedchildrensfund.org. You can find out more information about them and what their missions are in this world. And I think you'll agree with me that it's an important mission, and that we need to bring more awareness, whether it's sharing on social media or just talking about it with somebody who you think could possibly give more attention to their, you know, whether it's financial or bring more awareness, or they have a platform or whatever, but just bringing more awareness to it and just kind of putting it out there for folks to understand what their mission is and what they're trying to achieve. I mean, that's all we can do, right? Is just bring more awareness to issues like this and do our best to try to be of service to that. And then after you go there, go to traydowns.com. Let me know how you guys are doing, how you're doing on your mission. What are you guys up to? I love hearing your stories. It's just so fascinating just to hear. It's so beautiful that we can connect on that platform. I get all the messages and listen and try to reach out to some people that I can maybe help, and it's a beautiful thing to connect and hear the power and hear the emotion and hear the just some of the stories. I really do appreciate that. So I'm excited about this conversation. I hope you guys are too. So without further ado, here is my I don't even know what to call it. Here is my connecting to the inner source conversation with the great and powerful Udo Erasmus.
Hi, my name is Udo Erasmus, and this is Your Superior Self.
Udo, my man, how are you doing this evening?
I'm just almost as good as you are, and I'm fabulous, is what I always say.
Udo, I want to say thank you for joining the show. I feel like your story is very unique, and I wanted to have you on because it is that unique that I need to discuss it with you. So
okay.
Why don't we go ahead and start?
Okay.
Where are you from originally?
Okay, I was born during the Second World War in 1942 in Poland, which was then part of Germany, in the middle of all the craziness that was going on. And the war ended in 1945 in winter, and we were refugees. I was not 3 yet. We were refugees fleeing in horse-drawn hay wagons let me get this right. Yeah, westward from Poland into Germany, with the communists chasing us in trucks and tanks on roads that were like dirt roads with no military presence, all just women with young children, pretty much. And the Allies, the good guys, were using us as target practice, shooting us from planes. Basically air artillery. And, the wagon broke down. We couldn't stop to feed the horses. I mean, it was really crazy. And I don't remember much other than anxiety, fear, didn't know what I could trust, didn't feel safe, hungry, contradictions, it's crazy. I had just been toilet trained because I was 2, right? And then we were on a wagon. I say, I got to go. And just after I got toilet trained, they said, well, just a minute. And they then wrapped like string around my pants and said, go in your pants, right? I just mastered my first civilized act, so to speak. But it was crazy. I mean, and so my mother, eventually she went through the fields because it was safer in the fields than it was on the roads, because the roads were being shot at. And she had 6 kids with her that are 6 or younger. And she had to leave 4 of them behind. I was one of the ones who got left behind. We ended up in an orphanage in Berlin, me and my sister. And eventually we got reunited. But it was very, very crazy. And I look back at it now and I say, it wasn't fun. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I don't think you should raise your children in a war zone. But it was a huge gift because it rubbed my nose very early in what happens when human beings don't cultivate harmony, cooperation, peace, and care when they have the luxury to do so. Because when we don't cultivate the best in us, we will always drift down towards the worst in us. And because I got that information early, it got me thinking early. So when I was 6 years old, I listened to people argue, adults argue about things that I thought were really trivial. And I thought to myself, wow, there must be a way that people can live in harmony. And then, like a little bright-eyed, bushy-tailed 6-year-old who doesn't know how complicated everything is, I said, I'm going to find out how. And that's been my driver all my life. I'm going to find out how people can live in harmony. And so out of that, when it came to education, I read a lot of books because books were safe. You can read about a war, but nobody's shooting at you from out of the book, right?
Sure.
So I read a lot of books and I just always looking around, trying to figure things out. When it came to education, I got into science to figure out how things work. Then I got into biosciences because I wanted to know what life is. Of course, you don't learn about life in biosciences. You learn form and function, but you never get that beaker of liquid shining thing that's called life. Mm-hmm. And if we still worked with living creatures, by the end of our experiment, the creature was dead, but we never got a handle on the life.
Sure.
So, and then I got into psychology. I wanted to understand how thinking works, and psychology means study of soul, like biology means study of life, right? We didn't study soul in psychology. Then I went into medicine for a year because I thought that's where you go to study health, because it's called healthcare, right? The healthcare system. We only studied disease, so we didn't study health in medicine. Then I went into biochemistry and genetics and realized that you learn more about health in biology than you do in medicine, because you're studying the normal functioning of normal creatures. And that's an approximation of where you're going to find health. And then I left genetics, because I still hadn't found what I was looking for, as YouTube so famously said. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. And so then I got into self-knowledge. And that's, of course, where I found what I was looking for, because what I was looking for and what I needed to know is how I function.
Self-knowledge.
Self-knowledge. Yeah.
So what did I mean? Self-knowledge, right? Like, so self, like reflecting inward, right? Like, but how did you stumble upon that, right? Like, who was the biggest influence on you as an author?
Well, I had experiences, because I was a pretty isolated kid. I didn't feel like I had a lot of support on the outside. Now, the people who supported me could argue that, but that's how I felt, right? And so, when you can't go out, I say this about COVID too, right? If you can't go outside, go inside. If you don't have much support on the outside, you probably will be inclined to look for support on the inside. And there is support on the inside, and you can find it. So that's happened early on, when I was 15 years old. When I was 17 years old, I started feeling my heart ache, and I couldn't shake it. And I felt it like every day. And then 13 years later, a few other things happened, but 13 years later, I actually met somebody who says, the peace you search for in the world is within you. And I can show you how to connect to that. And before that, I had tried to find it in religion. I wanted to understand why people were still talking about Jesus 2,000 years later, but nobody remembered my grandfather. He hadn't been dead for 50 years at that point. In fact, I don't even know his name. And he had died before I was born. So I said, there must have been, what was it that made him memorable? I want to know what that is, and I want to experience what he experienced. And nobody said you can't.
Yeah.
Well, some people say you can't, but I wanted to experience it. Why? Because I need something here. And so I actually was treated very badly by a Christian group, because I said to them, look, it must be possible to see God and live. We were always told, if you see God, you die. But Jesus saw it, and Moses saw, and Elisha, Elijah, and a bunch of people in the book saw God and lived. Well, why not me? I think I need something like that. And so they got really upset. And the guy actually went ballistic when I said that. I didn't introduce myself. I didn't say, here, hey, tell me all the good stuff. I thought we would share some information, because we're all on the same path, trying to figure out the same stuff. But that just turned out not to be true. They called themselves the Jesus People's Army. That should have been a warning to me. Armies and wars, right?
Yeah, right.
And so he just went ballistic. He said, "You're from the devil. You're from the Antichrist. Get out." So off I go out. I'm standing on the sidewalk in the dark, haven't seen God, saying, holy smokes, maybe I'm not supposed to ask this question. And I got really confused, and I really desperate, and I really wanted to know. And what I used to do in those days, I would go to clear my head. I would always go to nature. And so I went to nature, and I lived on a beach for a weekend, and in the middle of the night, I was dead asleep and woke bolt upright, and there was this being made of light. Couldn't tell if it was male or female, couldn't tell if it was young or old, but a human being made of light, embodying a message, not talking, no sign on his head who this is, just that being and a message that embodied. And the words I could put to that message was, I am come not to judge, but to love. And all my desperation was instantly totally evaporated. And I have never had a question of what was the central message of any of the great masters, whether you talk about Jesus or Buddha or Krishna or Lao Tzu, or even Socrates would probably fit pretty closely into that group. I am come not to judge, but to love. And that's the message of the masters to us. but it's also the message of life, which is the master within every human being, to the body. I am come not to judge, but to love. Unconditional love within every human being, called life energy. It's also solar energy, because that's where it comes from.
Mm.
And we can go to that. And literally, it weighs nothing, and it does everything, and it's omnipotent, all powerful in your body. It's everywhere present in your body, omnipresent, and it knows everything in your body because it runs the entire show without you or me having to, make my breath come in and out, make our heartbeat, runs the show when we're asleep and when we're awake and when we're focused on something else. Unconditional love, 24/7, 365, lifelong. And so there's something in every human being that is like those great masters were. Maybe even more effective, because that life energy, it's like, when people talk to me about it being self-made men, sometimes people do that. Oh yeah, I did this, and I did this, and I did this. Okay, let's see. You had sex with yourself, and then you got pregnant with yourself, and then you cared yourself, and you bore yourself, and then you created the society that you live in, and you start looking at it like this and say, no, nobody is self-made. We are brought in through all kinds of things that are not ours. And but we take a track where we forget that we are here courtesy of what some people call grace, courtesy of life, courtesy of solar energy that goes into green plants, that activates electrons, puts them in a high energy state. Then they react with other electrons from other atoms and create bonds between those. And the energy, the sunlight energy, is stored in those bonds. Those molecules become our food. We eat the foods in our body. Life breaks them down, and that's the energy we live on. There's the life energy. Solar, that's the scientific view, seeing the energy, understanding how the energy works. But when you go inside and get into direct experience with that energy, then you are the energy instead of seeing the energy. Be the energy instead of see the energy. Seeing is science, being is spiritual, is consciousness.
Well, how do you like go inward? Like, how do you experience that energy? Like, what is it? Like, I know they talk about meditation, silence the thoughts, like clear your mind.
Yeah.
How do you know when you're there, though?
Well, you will know, because you spent the first 9 months, if you're a full-term baby, you spent your first 9 months in that place. When you were in the mother's body, I call it the Buddha tank, right? You're in the mother's body. There's nothing to do. There's nowhere to go. Everything's taken care of, and it's safe. And so what are you doing? Oh, your body is hanging from a cord. You're just floating around, right? Nowhere to go. So where is your focus at that point? Where is your awareness at that point? At that point, your awareness is at rest, inside, in its source, in life. And you spend 9 months in this enlightened state, because there's light within you. That energy is light. It's also sound. It's also feeling, and it's also taste. You can experience those if you bring your awareness into the energy that is your life. And when you're a kid, you have no other place to go. When you're a fetus, you have no other place to go. You have no language, so you're not tripped in your head. You don't have emotions to, other than maybe if somebody pokes your mother in the stomach, and then you maybe get a little startled. But there's not much there in a worldly sense. So you're in the otherworldly place. And then when you come out, then it changes. Now you have to cry for your breast, and you have to cry for your diaper change, and you have to cry for when you're uncomfortable, or when you want to sleep, or when there's too much noise or something is not right, then you start to have to learn how to get to know the world, because now you need to learn how to physically survive in that world. And to help you able to do that, life set it up so that once you're born, your awareness, your focus of awareness is attracted outward through your senses whenever something changes. And then it gets your attention, and you have to figure out, is this friend or foe, or is it irrelevant? And then you have to learn to respond to change in a way that is conducive to your survival for the time that you have physically on this planet. And in that process of going out automatically, you go from being present inside and absent outside in the focus of your awareness to being present outside and more with time absent inside, disconnected from inside in your awareness. And then the question becomes, how do you get back? When your awareness goes outward as you get to know the world, you get disconnected from yourself, you lose your connection to yourself. And with that disconnection comes a discontent or a feeling of loss or an emptiness or a restlessness or a sorrow or a sadness or maybe anxiety or confusion or separation, loneliness, longing, blues. Those are all words for an uncomfortable feeling in our chest that we get whenever something that we've come to appreciate on the outside, when that ends. Because when that ends, we're thrown back to our loss of our connection to ourselves. That's what that feeling is. It's not about grandma who died, or the dog who ran away, or the friend who moved to another city, or the person you had an agreement with who broke the agreement. That's not it. Those are our substitutes. From those things, we try to get our feeling of fulfillment, but we don't get it. We only get a distraction. Then the distraction ends, and then we're back to, I'm disconnected. But we don't know that, because in our culture, we don't get told that this ache in our heart that we feel consistently to so many different endings in the world, that is actually the greatest gift we have other than being alive, because it is our heart calling our awareness to come back home to life, its source, inside. And when we do that, then we go back to the state that we were in before birth, and we recognize that state, because it's not a new state. It's not a new state for anybody. We've all been there.
How did you find this out? Like, how did you come about with the Buddha tank and realize that? Now, Stan Grof, who is big into a lot of the therapy early on with psychedelics and holotropic breathing, breath work, talks about going back past lives. Well, actually, like age regression all the way back to the perinatal stages, and talks about some people, when they are brought back in these states of mind, can remember or have visions of when they were in the womb. And then as he regressed further, actually some people would go into the next life.
Right.
When did you come about with the Buddha tank? When did you start realizing that this is our home? This is like that being, that awareness that is inside of our heart. Was it that night when you woke up and you saw the vision of possibly Jesus? Was it that, or how did you figure this out?
There have been experiences in a similar vein since I was 15. I remember lying in bed. I was not very socially adjusted. I didn't have many friends. I didn't trust people that much. because, and I think that's all tied to my early experiences. I'd had other unfriendly experiences with religious people, and I had come to the conclusion that you got to be careful with people because, it's like nature and life and whatever you call the big picture God are okay, and they don't seem to be antagonistic to me, no matter what I'm doing. But you have to be careful with people because sometimes they'll say one thing and then they mean something else, and then they'll take it out on you.
Sure.
And I had some experiences like that. So, but
in
terms
it's hard
of
for me though. It's hard for me. Like I'm just like, I'm probably, I don't know how old you're. 15. I'm 38, going to be 38.
Yeah.
I've experienced, I've experienced a growth in my spirituality, not religious dogma, but spirituality, like coming home to the heart. And what you're talking about with Jesus, I when I meditate, I have visions of him telling me that I am like him, and not, that I can be as just as, and people might not like this, but he has told me in my visions and my meditation that I can be just as powerful as him, not with like earthly powers, but like as the being that I am from the source of God, that I am that. And I've questioned reality. Like, are we in like this simulation? Are we in this? Is reality real? Like, I just think that, just studying a lot of different philosophers, Plato and allegory of the cave, and thinking about the light that is shown in the cave with the prisoners there. Like, is the reality that I'm experiencing real? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Right. Okay. So, when I was in university, I was very tightly wound. I was shy. Like I said, I read a lot, but I was very, very tight. And I was in science, studying biology and biochemistry, and it was the 60s, and there were people in the arts faculties who were using psychedelics. And I worked in a neurological research lab. And in the neurological research lab, they had 144 ampoules of Sandoz LSD, the original stuff from Sandoz, the pharmaceutical company, in a liquid ampoule. And I'd heard about psychedelics, and I'd heard about LSD, and I thought probably Sandoz would be the best one to take if you're going to do it. So I snitched 6 ampoules. And I took 60 micrograms, which was basically 6/10 of one little ampoule. So 60 micrograms, it's a very small amount. Put it, broke the ampoule, you break the top off, sucked it up in a sugar cube, ate the sugar cube. That's how we were told to do it. And I was with 2 friends. They didn't partake. I rolled on the floor laughing, listening to Mozart, laughing in time with his music. The tears were streaming down my face. And I thought it was the craziest thing that here I was, all studious and serious and trying to figure everything out on the outside. And everything I was so studiously looking for on the outside was actually present inside of me. So that kind of blew my door open. And then it was like, oh my God, the way I live and the way we live is just one of thousands of different ways that we could live. And then the question became, I saw options. The question was, how do I want to live? And that took me some time to sort out, to try out things, to see what made the most sense to me as a way to live. Certainly the militaristic, everybody does the same thing and everybody toes the same line. That fell apart. And then I got to a point, I did other psychedelics as well for a couple of years, 1966. 1964 to 1970. I did pretty much all the psychedelics that were available at that time, not ayahuasca because it wasn't available, but psilocybin and mescaline. And so I did quite a bit of that and had really profound, deep experiences because I never used it as a party drug. I always used it as a seek wisdom drug. And I had great experiences. What you were talking about, your experiences sounds somewhat similar. But then I started getting burned out. And I decided to spend 2 weeks not doing any psychedelics because they're not addictive. So it's not like that hard because I said, I only have one body, so I got to look after it. And so I decided not to do any psychedelics for 2 years. And before the 2 years were up, I met a 14-year-old boy who said, the peace you search for in the world is within you. I can show you that peace. I was very interested in peace because I came out of a war. So I had been in the peace movement, but that was actually an anti-war movement. I was looking for peace against one of those things, you know. So it's one thing is what they advertise and the other thing is what they deliver. And then I started basically sitting still. Started sitting still with this feeling and sitting in that feeling. Because what we usually do when our heart hurts, we want to either distract ourselves from it or deny it or ignore it or blame it on somebody. But that's not what this is for. This is like the greatest gift we've been given other than being alive. Because when we sit with that, then we are that far, like less than a hair's breadth from the wholeness within us, because we're already inside. But that's the starting point. There's no point going to a wonderful place of peace if you don't have a need for it, if you don't feel a need for it. And I don't know any culture that makes it clear that this heart, this uncomfortable feeling in our chest is the call for peace, the call for love, the call for wholeness, for oneness, for fulfillment, for understanding, whatever you call that state. And that ache drives us. It's our driving force. It's why we make big plans and try to get huge money or huge success or incredible adventures, or, you know, because somewhere in us is always the hope, conscious or subconscious or unconscious, that when we succeed in what we set out to do, then we will feel whole again. The problem with that is that we're trying to fix on the outside what needs to be connected to on the inside. And so then what happens is if we become majorly successful, then we have 3 days where we go, oh yeah, I did. And you know, jump up and down 3 days. And on day 4, the ache's back. Because you cannot fix a disconnection on the inside with a connection on the outside. You have to fix the disconnection, the inner disconnection, by an inner reconnection. Now, how do I know that? You know, I've read and I've tried stuff, and I've talked to people, but a lot of it comes from experience. And for me, it was, I couldn't shake it. So I was always, I mean, people said to me, don't think about it. It'll just drive you crazy. I couldn't not think about it because it was always there. Somebody said, why don't you get a job like your brother? I couldn't. I needed to understand what that was. And because it wouldn't let go of me, I became, you know, I did my 10,000 hours, right? You know, the 10,000 hours to master something. Well, I did my 10,000 hours.
10,000 hours of meditation.
Well, you know, it's funny. Some of them were psychedelic. Some of it was meditation. I've done many different kinds of meditation. Sometimes it would be just sitting in nature. Sometimes it would be just getting quiet. So in a way, you could say there's 8 billion ways to get to that place, because it's in every one of the 8 billion people on the planet. and the journey is personal. You know, when you go to when a kid's crawling on the floor and they're trying to learn to walk, how do you explain to the kid how to walk? It doesn't have language yet. How do you do it? You can't really tell him. You say to him, I know you'll do it. I know you'll get there. And so what's the kid do? Tries it, falls down. Tries it, falls down. Tries it, falls down. Falls on the back, falls on the side, falls on the stomach, you know, falls down the stairs, you know, cries, never quits. Keeps going, keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. And so there are lots of different schools of meditation, all very different, very different. The issue is always, the starting point is the ache, and the goal is the peace. And the journey is not even a hair's breadth. When you're in touch with the ache, you're less than a hair's breadth from the peace. And I would say the most important thing is feel the peace, sit with it, but sit quietly. You know, sit still. See how still you can become. See how deeply still you can become. See how long.
Does that heartache ever turn into? Go ahead.
Hang on. Let me just finish. See how long you can stay in that stillness. See how lightly you can breathe, and slow your breathing down. And you just, and then occupy the space your body occupies, and look at what else. Look at, listen to, feel, and taste what the energy in the space your body occupies feels like, because it's already there. So you're not creating something. You're uncreating. You're having to let go of your thoughts and your emotions and your outside world, and bring your awareness into inspiration, or into life energy, which is below that, or into pure awareness, which is below that. It's already in there. That's the thing. It's already in there. What would it be like for you to picture yourself in your mother's womb with nowhere to go and no language? And fundamentally, it's a matter of relaxing, letting go. Relaxing, letting go. Whatever that takes. Or getting out of your head. You know, cold shower will do that. An ice bath like Wim Hof does, you know, ice bath will get you out of that.
Yeah.
Right. You know, or skydiving will do that. So people do some of it, they do it for the adrenaline. And sometimes it depends on who you are, how you focus. Some people get really, really peaceful in those jumps. I haven't done that. I don't need it. Right. But fundamentally, it's about, you know, when you get in the zone, when you're in a sport, some people's meditation is playing music. Anything that is relaxing, anything that is in a place where you feel comfortable and accepted. You know, anything that's parasympathetic, which is the restful state. Even slow dancing, you know, you can just,
Sure.
You know, following your breathing, because there's no thoughts in your breath. There's no, you know, if you can follow your breathing, that takes you out of your head. If you focus on your kneecap, there's no thoughts in your kneecap either. So to get away from the overthinking, and a lot of times when we read spiritual, we're still overthinking it, because now we're reading that, and then we're reading something else, and we're reading that, but we're just triggering our thoughts doing that. And at some point, you got to put the book down. At some point, it's not about words, it's about a feeling. And that feeling exists already. And in most yogas, breathing is a part of what they do, simply because if you focus on your breathing, there's motion going on, so it's not hard to focus on it. And there's no thoughts in your breath. And if we had no thoughts, we'd all be present. But we train ourselves to be in our thoughts all the time. You know, every skill that you learn, you get a book, you read the skill, Look at my shelf here. I got shelves here. I got shelves upstairs. I got shelves in another room, and I've read lots of stuff, but none of that stuff, because I have to read myself, but not read words with myself, but read feeling, vision, sound, taste. They all exist within me beyond the realm of words and emotions. A blade of grass has no words, probably has a better experience than most humans.
Sure. I mean, the rock outside my window has a better experience.
Yeah. But the issue I think is more about relaxing and letting go.
Yeah.
Than it is about, because we try to do everything with our head. And it's like Google. Google gets you everything except yourself. So you can get all the words on Google, but you will not get the experience of yourself.
Where are you at, like, in your journey? Like, you seem like you have a really good, like, just knowledge of self, knowledge of what it is you're here to do. I'm assuming that you have had experiences with God, source, like either with LSD or psychedelics or even in meditation. And it seems like the answer is love. You talk about the heartache, and then when you meditate and you find yourself, that I'm assuming that the heart center activates and you feel that, right? Like that vibration, that buzzingness that is the heart. Like, where are you at right now in your journey?
Well, I've never seen the bottom of that journey. I think this is the only growth industry that will never cast any shadows, and that you can continue, because you're going into something that's infinite, that is formless, dimensionless, but experiential. But I've never seen how deep it goes. So I'm a work in progress, just like everybody's a work in progress. The masters are works in progress too. It's just he may be a step or 100 steps or 1,000 steps in front of me. But the journey is the journey. It's the same journey, same journey, except the difference is the master does it for himself, and you do it for yourself, and I do it for myself. I don't even know if the journey is the same, mine and yours. It's going to be as unique as you are, but there are commonalities. There is a peace that is at the core of our being. And there is an unconditional love that runs our life. And there is an inspired creativity that is the shine of that love into the world. And there is a place where I feel so cared for that it's not about me anymore, because now I'm taken care of. And now it doesn't have to be about me anymore. So then what's left to do? How can I help? What needs to be done? What's the biggest splash for good I can make in the time that I have in one body, in one lifetime? Before I was able to go to the place where the wholeness lives in me, I was always looking and saying, what can I do that'll get me taken care of? And I wouldn't do things that needed to be done if I couldn't see how they would take care of me. The moment that it changed, that I said, okay, either I feel taken care of, or if I don't feel taken care of, then I know where to go, where cared for lives in me. I don't need outside help for that. I just need to go there. And it changed from what'll take care of me to how can I help? Huge, huge difference. Now I take on bigger projects. And guess what? Even from a business point of view, because I will take on things, I'll take on bigger projects. Because either because nobody wants to do them because they seem too difficult, or and what happens is, because I take on bigger projects or things that need to be done that people aren't doing, then even the business aspect is better. And of course, that's what all the wise people said. First, get present in your own life, and then everything else will become easier. Got to do your homework. This is the homework, right? Fall in love with doing the homework. You know, when you go into meditation, people sometimes say, "Oh, I can't stand it because it's so boring." And I say, "Well, fall in love with boredom." because if you actually pay attention to the boredom, notice how much peace is in that boredom. And you're on the right track because you've already come out of your addiction to activities and thinking. When you're in that no man's land where you don't feel anything, it's a lot more peaceful, and you're heading in the direction. You go a little deeper, you close your eyes and you see light in the darkness. You are that light. You hear sound in your silence. You are that sound. You feel love in your emptiness. You are that love. Right?
Yeah.
And you taste sweetness in your blandness. You are that sweetness. That's you, the energy that you are, that solar energy, that life energy. That's your sensing that light energy subjectively within the shell that is your body. You know, and even, you know, and if you want to know who you are, that's where you need to go. Because if I said to you, "Hey, Trey, whose body is that?" Most people would say, "This is my body."
Sure.
Yeah. Well, if you say this is my body, you've just busted yourself. You've just told me that you are not the body. You've just told me you are the owner of the body. And then the question becomes, well, then who is the owner? So who are you as owner of the body? And it's not Trey, that's just a label somebody stuck on you. And you just said you're not the body, so who are you? When it turns out that you are the life energy. You are life. So then the question becomes, well, how well do you know yourself as life, the owner of that body? And most people would have to say, not very much, because I never look. Not very much, because I never spent time with my life. I spent my time with my addictions in the outside world, right? I spend my time thinking. I spend my time, you know, with emotional outbursts of positive or negative. I spend my time trying to become somebody in social circles. I spend my time practicing a skill that I've honed, that I've become pretty good at, because I spent my 10,000 hours on it. But that's not how you find yourself. That's not how you discover what is the nature of your nature. And it turns out that when you do your homework and you sit with yourself in that ache and you drop into your being, is the most incredible experience that it is possible for you to have. Better than sex and better than all of the adventures that we try to knock down one by one off of our bucket list.
Yeah. Traveling
here and traveling there. But the most incredible thing that can happen in your life, you're sitting. It's sitting within you. You're sitting on it, right? And still, from a cultural point of view, we don't recommend that people do that, even though that is the best experience in your life. It is also your greatest purpose, because you get a body for 100 years if you're lucky. And what's the point of it? After that, the water goes back to the water, and the dust goes back to the dust, and the air goes back to the air, and the light disappears somewhere. And what was the point of this thing? You know, you got born, and then you lived, and then you died. If it wasn't to experience how incredible it is to be alive, a life in human form, and all the things you can have. You know, water is interesting, but not that interesting. And air is interesting, but not that interesting. And dirt is interesting, but not that interesting. And light is interesting, but not that interesting. But when you mix them all up together and make a human being out of them, you can dance and you can sing and you can cry and you get depressed and you can struggle and and you can fly and you can have adventures and you can write poetry, and you can have orgasms and you can feel pain. I mean, all that stuff, just because this stuff was put together in a particular way, and it's all just water, air, and light. Water, air, and light, and dirt. Right?
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think I do get caught up in external goals and external desires, right? Like, in the search for God, it's like, we automatically go outward. We feel like it's outside of ourselves because I don't know. I felt guilty for a long time, even to even think that I'm somewhat as powerful as that source of that life source.
Oh, wait. God is everywhere, right? That's by definition. God is everywhere. Well, you're part of everywhere. So God's got to be, if God is everywhere, God's got to be in you too. You're not God. You're not you're not God. You're not running the universe, but you're a spark. You're a human spark of that God. And so is everybody else. No matter what they've done and what their past is and what their story is and whether they're in jail or they're in a loony bin or they're in the White House, in terms of who we are as creatures. We all have that in us, but we all are taken outside by our senses most of the time, and that will never change, because even now, I can be very calm and sit in my peace, and then all of a sudden a skunk runs across the road and I'm there, right? It's automatic because it's part of survival, and I can get to a point where I can stay in peace and watch the skunk run, because I'm safe most of the time. In most situations, they're not life-threatening. So I can do that. And the goal becomes, can I be fully present in all of my being and my surroundings at the same time? So then we're talking about internal awareness, life energy, inspired creativity, physical body, survival smarts, crisis management, social group, natural environment, and big picture. That here I am in a terminal condition called the human body that I get. I'll be 79 next month, so maybe if I'm lucky, I have 30 years.
What's your birthday?
14th of May.
I'm on the 10th of May.
10th. Oh yeah, another Taurus. and this whole thing this whole terminal condition is playing out in an infinite universe, and to be okay with that. And because I feel peace, and because I know something survives that is formless, which is the internal awareness, which is where the peace lives. And that peace, by the way, I access it in the core of my being. But when I sit with that, in that peace, it isn't limited by my body. It is centered in me, and it's centered in each one of us, and it goes out to infinity from there. I can sit in that. So God is in me and I'm in God. What if you think of it as the field, like the physicists say, or the power that is everywhere, that runs everything, that is formless, indestructible, never gets sick, never dies, has no inside or outside dimension, right? That's in you, that's in me, that's in every human being. And then the life energy, that is the solar energy that went through the green leaves, and that runs this show, that's our individual essence. And that energy is in a flow, because it's always flowing through the body. That's why we keep eating stuff to get the energy, right? That is also formless and indestructible and never gets sick. And you want to talk about health, that's where you find health. Then the shine of that energy is inspired creativity. That's the shine of life energy into the world. That's the positive part of mind. That's where inventions and genius and all of that kind of stuff comes from. The body is food, fitness, rest, recovery, and digestion and detox, pretty much. That has form. Anything that has form will lose its form. So now we're talking things that change, things you can't depend on. And, my body is like a waterfall, like a trickle waterfall, right? You pour water in the top, and you pull it out the bottom, and it washes things in between, right? And air goes in and it comes out as carbon dioxide. So that's a cycle that's going on all the time. There's nothing stable in this thing. And even the dirt, even the dust, even the atoms in my body, 98 of them are removed and replaced every year. That's why healing is possible. But again, when you say this is my body, well, yeah, your body is a major construction site, right? So that's changing. And then your social environment changes all the time. Your natural environment changes all the time. And then the only other thing that doesn't change is infinite awareness, which is the foundation, which is the peace that is the foundation of my existence, but also the existence of the entire universe. And when I feel that peace, I look around at the world and say, oh my God, peace has always been everywhere. There has never been a time or a place where peace has not always been. Even on the battlefield, where soldiers are killing each other, they're doing that on a foundation of complete peace, because that peace is within them, everywhere within them, just like it is within you and me. It's within them, it's between them, it's around them, it's above them, it's below them. But their focus is, you're my enemy and I'm going to kill you. And the other guy is saying, you're my enemy, I'm going to kill you. And so in a foundation of complete peace, they have their battle. And the same way, in a foundation of complete peace, we all do whatever we do. And what if you could do what you do and feel the peace at the same time? Because it's always there. Sure. What if you are anxious about something or depressed about something and you feel peace at the same time, or you feel unconditional love at the same time? Because they're both there. If you're prone to giving depression and anxiety more attention than peace, will balance the picture, because you get to decide. And you don't have to go far for depression. You don't have to go any further for peace, because it exists. All of it exists within you. All of it exists within every human being. Now, we're not, it hasn't been explained to us in a way where it becomes obvious that we have options. But it's about time that we did.
Sure.
And it's part of what I think is, I was born in a war. I think we could all live in harmony. We're wired for living in light. We're wired for it. It's in our nature. It's just we need to look into it instead of looking away from it. It always comes back to that. Do the homework, do the homework, do the homework. Come home, come home, come home. Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. Feel, feel, feel. Right?
Sure.
And then when you finished your meditation, don't leave it. Drag it into the world with you. Say, I want to take this feeling into the world with me. Why? Because it's the best thing I can do as a contribution in the world, is to influence people in that direction. I can't make anybody do it, but I can influence it, because it is a very pleasant feeling. And people follow people who have that feeling just because it feels good. That's why the masters had popularity, right? And people, if people didn't know how to connect to it within themselves. They would connect to it by going to somebody who was connected to it within themselves. And then these guys did their best they could to say to them, listen, what I have, you have. Just don't, it's not like I'm the good guy and you guys are all screwed. Everybody has it. And I'll do whatever I can, but it's your journey. See, I can't walk the journey for you. I can talk from that journey. Sometimes you might get in contact high if I do that. I can give you hints about some of the things I've done, but the hints are not necessarily there. It's not like there's not a formula for 8 billion people. Yeah. The kid learns by sticking to trying to get up. He gets better and better. Then he, first he goes crash, crash, crash. At one point, the little kid can't even turn over on its back from its stomach. So it has to learn that, but it's always by practice, always, because it sees people do it. It sees it's possible. So, and then it gets up and falls down, and then it gets up and totters a little bit and then falls down, and pretty soon it's running around the block and making the neighborhood unsafe. Right?
Udo, I could talk to you all night, man. This is just awesome. How can people find you? How can they connect with you?
I'm not hard to find. I have a YouTube channel that's mostly about the work that I've done with oils and enzymes and nutrition. I have there's other stuff on there too, and I have 2 websites. One is called Udo's Choice, UDO's Choice. That's where I talk about some of the kind of nutrition work I've done and why we do it the way we do it. It's educational and products there. And I have one called theudo.com, THEUDO, or UdoErasmus.com. And it's a more information education courses. We're just building that. Mm-hmm. And I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook and what else do we have here?
Well, I followed you on Instagram, so definitely loving the content over there.
Yeah. We were talking about anger last time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last question. This is kind of big. What do you want your legacy to be?
You know what? I actually don't have a plan for legacy. I don't care if anybody remembers me. I actually don't. Because you know what? When you're dead, your body is turning into what you need a legacy for. Mm-hmm. I don't care if people remember me afterwards, but I would like to live my life in that full presence in my being and my surroundings, and do what I can to raise the energy, to raise the quality of life on this planet. That turns me on. When I realized we could help so many people with making oils with health in mind, honestly, I went off like a firecracker, and it was like, oh my God, we could help so many people. I really like it because I know how bad it can get. And I want to do what I can for it not to go there. Right. I can't force it, but I can do something. Mm-hmm. I can always do something. And what's cool about it is it's also the best experience that I can have, to be in the place where energy is being raised, where the enjoyment of life is being grown. It's the best experience for me, plus it's the best experience that would be most worthwhile to help anybody else with.
Sure.
Yeah.
Udo, I can't thank you enough for coming on here, man. This has been amazing.
Thank you. I'm glad. I really appreciate you and what you do, because I don't know how many people listen, but even if there's nobody listening except you, it's still worthwhile. You and your mom, yeah. That's really funny. Yeah, no, because this is a good direction to have conversations into. Mm-hmm. Better than some of the politics and the bitching and the fighting and the You know, it's like, why? Why when it could be so much easier and so much better for everybody?